Episode 34 of The Burrows. Kevin Buck, Michael Merlo coming to you live every week throughout baseball season. You can also find these afterwards on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Use the link in our Instagram bio, and we post them on Twitter. You can also follow The Burrows BTO on Twitter. It's at The Burrows BTO. But today, spring training starting. That's what we're discussing. Soto's Mets era beginning. The Yankees, do they suck? We think they might, but they could also be very good, but we think they might suck. And some other stuff regarding injuries, stuff around the league that we're going to bring up. But, Mike, first, spring training's back, man, and there's really nothing better than this time of the year when you see those first couple pictures and videos and just gets that feeling back that baseball's right around the corner.
It's a great feeling right now, right? And then even like this weekend, they'll start playing some games, and that'll be cool for a week or two. And then probably by mid-March, right before March Madness starts, you get to a point where you're like, enough of this BS. Can we just play real baseball? So it's good right now. It's almost like a honeymoon phase. And we're going to get to a point where we get sick of this. But right now it's great. It's exciting. And we're upcoming. We're coming up to the best time of the year.
Absolutely. And I just want to start with my Yankees here because last episode we did a lot of Mets stuff. You can see it was basically an exclusively Mets episode. A little bit of Yankee stuff at the end, but that was the Alonso signing. Now we'll be coming every week with those were more of the pop-ups. This is probably our last off-season pop-up episode. And then moving forward, it'll be every week with both squads, and we'll have substantial news with both teams every time. But I want to start with the Yankees here because I've started to question them over the last few weeks. And now I think you're getting there as well. You see the injuries that are taking place already. Stanton's hurt. Austin Wells is now hurt. The whole team seems to be getting banged up. Marcus Stroman we'll talk about in a little bit, but they don't feel like they're in a great place to start this spring training. And for a team that just went to the World Series, obviously they're in a better place than the White Sox, than a lot of other teams. But for a team that just went to the World Series, the Yankees feel a little underwhelming at this point. And you look at this lineup, Mike, it just doesn't feel that good. This lineup is relying on a lot of stuff to go right that might not.
Right. That's the problem. And, I started to feel this way a little bit over this past weekend about this Yankees team. And, they made, listen, we know the moves they made, right? They became a deeper team. They became a more athletic team and hopefully a better defensive team. And I mean, they should definitely be a better defensive team this season. But you look at the lineup and there's no real protection for Aaron Judge. I don't really know who we should hit lead off. I have a projected lineup that I made that I would be interested to hear your opinion on. But still, I have Austin Wells protecting Aaron Judge. And I know Austin Wells had a nice stretch last year where he was hitting behind, I think it was Judge at some point. But that's not a recipe for success here. I just don't think Judge is going to be pitched to. So I do have some questions about this lineup. And the rotation's older, and I'm not necessarily worried about the rotation, but a couple of things could go wrong. And, oh no, what are we going to do here? So, and we haven't even brought up the Marcus Stroman situation, by the way. So there's just a lot right now that I don't love about this team. But again, it could all flip the other way and it could all go right and they could be right back in the World Series.
Because you look at the lineup right now and you can mock the lineup a bunch of different ways. I'd like to hear what yours is afterwards, but it's probably going to look something like, I don't even know if Chisholm's the leadoff guy, but something like Jazz, Judge, or Volpe, Judge, Jazz. But after Judge, regardless, it's going to be Bellinger, it's going to be Goldschmidt, it's going to be Stanton in some order, however you want to put it. And those three guys, first of all, Stanton doesn't even look like he's going to play to start the year right now. So that's out already. Now your bench stinks. That's another whole conversation. But Stanton's out probably to start the year. And I don't think that's overreacting right now. It might not end up being the truth, but I don't think he plays opening day. And then Trent Grisham probably isn't going to play opening day. So who's left on the Yankees bench? Ben Rice going to DH to start the year? Okay. So Goldschmidt, Bellinger hitting around Judge. Those two guys could stink, Mike. That's the problem I have with this team is not only are you relying on Volpe and Dominguez to be good, and Volpe was not very good last year in the regular season. He was actually terrible for a large portion of the regular season last year. Dominguez, in a very short sample last year, was awful. And now you're relying on these guys to take big leaps while also hoping Paul Goldschmidt and Cody Bellinger shows some semblance of an MVP form that we haven't seen in years.
Yeah, and the issue I have also with right now, the way the lineup is constructed, is we're talking about two position players that need to develop into big-time players, because that's what, they were big prospects. Volpe and Dominguez were big prospects, and the Yankees haven't developed prospects in a very long time. They haven't developed position players in a very long time to the level at which, and I don't even want to say Judge, like just a consistent major league ball player. They haven't really done that. I mean, who's the last guy they did that with? Seriously.
It's honestly Judge, and then the second best is probably Gleyber Torres, who they just let walk in his free agency for cheap. So that's it.
And again, I'm not saying these guys have to be Judge. Of course not. But can you be consistent starters for, more than 5, 6, 7 years and be impactful? They haven't done that. So other than Gleyber and Judge, they haven't done that. Am I supposed to trust that this is they're going to develop Dominguez and Volpe? I have questions. As good as they are, as talented as they are.
Volpe so far, I mean, this for me, he's going to get his full 6 years of the contract, I believe. I think he's not going to leave the Yankees until free agency was to hit, or they have some sort of massive trade, which I don't think is going to happen, that would move him. But Volpe, for me, if I own this team, if I was the general manager, this is my make or break year going into it, because I see the potential, I see the talent, but I'm spending $300 million on a baseball team every year. I should be able to have a better shortstop than what Anthony Volpe's given me the last 2 seasons. And the inconsistencies are just disturbingly bad when he's not on. And when he's on, we saw last year, you're getting a lot of singles, a couple stolen bases, good defense, but you're not getting massive production. So remember last June when we were sitting here and there was that Gunnar Henderson, Bobby Witt, Anthony Volpe thing going on?
Yeah.
And we were like, he's not even close to any of that. Like if he didn't play shortstop for the Yankees, it wouldn't even be a conversation in the slightest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the truth. When he's on, he's not one of the top 5 shortstops in the league at his best. And that's okay, but he's not consistently good to where he's around the 10th best shortstop in the league either. So it's a huge make or break year for Volpe. He has to be good. He doesn't have to be great. He has to be good for the Yankees. And I just don't expect it to come all season for him to be good.
And an issue I have is, like, we're looking at, the news around Giancarlo Stanton being injured again, right? And, the people are talking about as if Stanton was the prime protection for Aaron Judge in this lineup. I understand his postseason once again was great, but to come into this season, if that was the guy that you had slated to hit behind Aaron Judge, and that was your grand old plan to, I'm not saying replace Juan Soto, but be that guy in the lineup for Judge, that's a massive issue. Because then, you really didn't replace Juan. Like, you could have brought in as many guys as you wanted. And all offseason, we heard about the job the Yankees did and how they might be better off that they let Juan Soto go. I look at this lineup, and I think that is the craziest statement anybody could ever make. These executives, the anonymous executives that came out and say, this might be a blessing in disguise for the Yankees. What are the Pirates talking? Are the Rockies talking? I mean, come on, get out of here with that.
It's terrible. And you look at the offseason, realistically, they probably, so if they're spending on their budget, which is obvious, the Yankees spend on a high budget every offseason. So Soto would have knocked away the acquisitions of Bellinger. It would have knocked away the acquisition of Fried. Excuse my dogs. Mm-hmm. But you probably leave this offseason with Soto, Goldschmidt, and Devin Williams. That's a better baseball team than what the Yankees have now with Max Fried, with Cody Bellinger. It's a better team because who is the significant add out of those guys? There's not one.
Who did you say would be Soto, Williams, and who?
Goldschmidt.
Yeah, it's probably a better offseason because you still have 5 or 6 guys in that rotation, 5 that you would feel good about.
So in that scenario, you don't get Fried,
yeah,
you don't get Bellinger.
You don't need
Soto's
Bellinger.
Way better than Bellinger. Like it's not even comparable at all. The two players and Fried. Okay, you still have a good pitching staff.
Yeah, it just makes it a little bit better. No, like the rotation wasn't the issue. The Rodon contract kills him. I mean, again, I don't know how many times we've said that. But if they didn't have Carlos Rodon, the amount of things that it would open up and the amount of things they could do offensively, like you could add Fried, and Fried would probably be a need, but you could do so many other things. Maybe they could have brought in Alex Bregman on that short-term contract. There's just so many other possibilities that could have opened up for this team. Listen, for a while now, there's been a contract or two that has just hamstrung this team. It's just not a good one. And it's a $20-25 million a year contract. And it's, there's a move that probably should be made, and it's not made because of it. And right now, Rodon and Stanton for a while, but more so Rodon, in my opinion, is that guy.
And Stroman, on a short-term basis, Stroman is just that money, $15 million a year. That's a backbreaker for a team trying to fill out their roster in February. That's terrible, Stroman, for $15 million a year.
It is, but I don't know if you want to move into him here. Like he is. I mean, we know he's a distraction. We know everywhere he goes, he's a distraction. But if you look at his career, and I think what he would be asked to do on this team, if he wasn't making $15 million a year, he's a really important piece because he does eat innings. That's the one thing he does. He makes most of his starts. He really doesn't miss starts, and he eats a lot of innings. So he is your perfect swing guy, sixth guy, maybe long reliever. He's obviously not willing to do that. He's a distraction. He's an expensive distraction, and the Yankees have to move off of him. But he's a valuable piece to a team that, listen, let's face it, Rodon's been injured. You don't know what's going to happen to Heel this year. You hope he stays healthy, but he was on an innings restriction last season. Cole finally had a little flare up in his elbow, right? Fried's been out a few years now, out of the last couple of seasons. So, Clark Schmidt was missed time last season. So with some injury history with this rotation, he would probably be the perfect sixth man if he would just shut up and do what he was told. But no, he can't do that.
The problem for me, too, with Stroman missing the days is I get the simple defense of, and I actually typically agree with the simple defense of, well, they're voluntary days. He missed them. He showed up to the mandatory day. Now let's get to work. I'm usually cool with that. I mean, I really didn't even get upset. Like Aaron Rodgers missed those days. I didn't really care. A voluntary day. Same deal here. But Stroman has a history of being a bad teammate. I mean, remember when the Mets got rid of him? I think 100% of the fan base was happy the Mets got rid of him. And that wasn't because of performance. Actually had nothing to do with performance.
He's pretty good as a Met.
He was good as a Met. So the Cubs didn't want him after a year. The Blue Jays had a stud homegrown starter that they didn't want anymore. The Mets moved off him quick. This is a trend, and Stroman is the common denominator. The organization and the fans upset with him are not the problem. Marcus Stroman is absolutely the problem in all of the things that have gone wrong for him in his Major League Baseball career.
And again, like when the Yankees made the move, it wasn't a bad move. You're bringing him in to be, a fourth or fifth starter. It wasn't awful. I mean, again, you pay a premium on pitching. I mean, the Mets paid $17 million for Frankie Montas off in, a year where his ERA was close to 5. You're paying a premium on pitching, but he's a headache. He's a major headache, and Cashman's dealing with the repercussions right now because I'm sure it's pretty difficult to trade him, not only based on the money, but, he's just an issue. Now, if it was purely based on performance, even at this point right now, you would be able to find a suitor. There are so many teams that he can help, but you're going to go with him, or would you pay Jose Quintana, who somehow is still a free agent, $10 million and say, here, you could be our fifth guy.
Stroman, too, you with the Yankees, like Cashman, what was he thinking? Giving him more than a year. He had no market. It was the end of free agency.
Yeah.
The Yankees go out and get Stroman. The two reasons you don't give him a multi-year deal, one, because you know his history, and two, because he's not great enough to prioritize getting him. You don't need to sit there and say Stroman could be, because sometimes I do think a guy like Jordan Montgomery, I know sacrilegious for me to say this, but late in an offseason, a guy like Jordan Montgomery coming off of the Texas run, I know it was a disaster in Arizona, but you could be sitting, or Snell last year too, you could be sitting there saying, this guy could be a missing piece for us. Stroman was never that. So I don't know what the logic behind a multi-year deal was.
No, and it would have made sense. I mean, what did he get 17 last year and Montgomery got 30? Obviously, you weren't going to that level, and it was probably worse. Montgomery was worse, but you're 100% correct about that. There was no reason. And by the way, how many times, he always talked about the Yankees. It was clear he probably wanted to be a Yankee at some point, right? Like all the talking he did, he was so upset he was never able to become a Yankee. So, Cashman throws a 1-year deal in front of his face. He's probably going to accept it.
And you're better off last year. Once again, I know the Yankees are on a budget. Go 1 for 20. Raise the AAV. Overpay him for a year. He was your last free agent signing. He completed your offseason.
So that you don't need to give him the second year.
Yeah, and if he's really good, you give him 2 for 40. If he was great, keep him around. He wouldn't have been hard to keep around. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's not great anymore. And another thing about Stroman and the Yankees, you get all these ground ball pitchers in here a year ago. And I understand that's Matt Blake's forte. That's what he likes to coach to. And they've done it. They've had success with these guys. They obviously had success with Clay Holmes. I know it didn't work out last season, but they had success with these guys. And you get all these ground ball pitchers. You get a terrible infield behind them last season with, once again, no third baseman. Gleyber Torres at second. Anthony Rizzo was awful at first. And we've said it a few times this offseason, Volpe's not a guy. He's not a great enough guy that you can wedge between a bunch of bad infielders. And now you're still running it back. Max Fried, another guy that's going to pitch for the ground ball. And you, once again, don't have a third baseman to put behind him. You shored up first base and second base. Volpe's good. But you're running out there again with DJ LeMahieu, with Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza, maybe Jorbit Vivas. I don't understand the logic here that Brian Cashman has taken to build this baseball team the last few seasons with the pitchers and the defense behind them. It doesn't add up at all.
Do you think, prediction-wise, I'll give you 2. Do you think they're able to trade Stroman before, we'll say opening day, before opening day, and will they trade for a third baseman?
I don't think they trade for a third baseman. I'll start with that one. Don't think it happens. Just don't see it at this point. I think they're
not going to be Arenado.
Definitely not going to be Arenado. I think the only possible outcomes would be, if they really wanted to go with a veteran guy like Justin Turner, who's still sitting out there. Yeah. Those are the only guys they'd add. And maybe it's a guy on a minor league deal, the way they did it with Gio Urshela a few years ago, where they say, let's see if this guy's got anything going into the season. But the only way they get rid of Stroman is if a contender's top 5 pitcher gets hurt, like season-ending injury hurt.
Okay.
To start the season, or right before the season starts, and which happens every year. Somebody has an ace go, or not an ace, but somebody has a top 4 go down. And they call up the team and say, we'll give you Stroman, you have to pay $8 or $9 million of it, and we'll take the rest. I think that's the only way they get rid of him.
There are so many teams that he could help right now. Yep. So many teams he could help right now. He could help Baltimore in the division. He could help Atlanta. He could help not San Diego. There's so many other teams. And I won't even mention the teams that don't want to spend, right? Of course, he could help Milwaukee. They would never do it. But it just, he would slot in to the bottom of the rotation and be a guy that makes a start every 5th day. And he's not going to be great, but he'll be productive.
Yep. And it's a shame on his own end that he does this to himself. He makes himself, as we've just mentioned ad nauseum in the last 5 minutes, unattractive to suitors. Teams don't want Marcus Stroman because you can find so many arms that give you at least hope that they can be a 4 ERA guy that don't come with the baggage and the ego that Stroman comes with.
Yeah, but I don't know if you could find guys that consistently make every start, and I can't believe I'm sitting here defending him. But he's not great. Again, he's not great. He's not a great pitcher. He pitches to contact. He doesn't throw the ball hard. he does post. I mean, that's the one thing. When he's talking to the media and he sounds condescending and he's saying he's not going to be a reliever, the one thing he does do is make most of his starts. You got to give him that. You have to.
He makes most of his starts. If you have a good infield behind him and he's going to be your 5th or 6th starter, I'm totally on board with it. For the year, you can do it. So I'll agree with that. I don't even necessarily think at this point he's an innings eater because he isn't going too far into outings anymore, but still just a guy who makes every start is so valuable at this point, even if it's 4 1/3, 4 2/3 every 5th, 6th game. That goes a long way in the league today if he can keep his ERA around 4, which he does.
Sadly.
I mean, last year I thought he kind of stunk, and his ERA was 4.3, and he made 30 starts. There's a lot of teams that could use that on.
Yeah.
And there's you have to imagine that even if you're Brian Cashman and you're saying, I just want him off my team, I don't need to get a player for him. I just want to get rid of some of this money and get him off my team. You have to imagine there's a team that will take at least 5 or 6 million of that. A team that doesn't spend much, like Baltimore, just to say we need an arm to fill out the back of this rotation, and we will take that. And even a team such as Baltimore, I don't think Brian Cashman's saying, I'm not trading Stroman in the division. Who cares?
You might be able to destroy them from within if you do it.
Yeah. That you'd prefer to trade them in your division. You want to hit against Stroman.
He's only on the phone with the Rays, Orioles, Blue Jays, and Red Sox. Those are the only teams on the phone with.
Yeah. That's it. What else?
Brad Ausmus is hurt. What happened?
Brad Ausmus is hurt. Yankees injury bug never goes away. Brad Ausmus pulls his hamstring. The assistant manager
did he actually
pick up basketball 2 days ago, and Boone was saying to the reporters, I advised him not to play, but he played, and now he's got a pulled hamstring and he's limping.
All right. Was Boone joking when he says that though? Because it's not a big deal.
No, I think he was definitely joking. He's definitely actually injured.
No,
but
Boone
but like was joking around, like I told him not to do it, and it was funny because Boone brought it up on the injury report.
Yeah,
like why is Brad Ausmus on your injury report?
I like Boone.
Let's talk Boone though.
He's getting an extension
because he's getting extended before the season starts. That sounds like a lock. And I sent you this list the other day, but does Aaron Boone deserve to get extended? He's the only Yankees manager to get a 5th season on the job without a championship. He's now had 7 seasons without a championship. He's the manager for their most lopsided home postseason loss in franchise history. He's the manager for their worst single-month record in 33 years. He's managed their worst season record in 31 years. He's the manager for the most steals allowed in a single game by the franchise in 109 years. Manager for the first 3+ game series sweep by an NL team at Yankee Stadium in franchise history. And a lot of these stats are very minuscule.
I mean, we're nitpicking big time here.
I know, but he's the ones that I care about are he's 7, and I would have given Boone this year too. I would not have fired Boone at this point, for the record.
Yeah.
But the ones I care about, he's the only Yankees manager to get a 5th season on the job without a championship. Now he's had 7. I think that is a representation of Hal Steinbrenner's complacency with Cashman and Boone and the organization. He's just happy with being there. He doesn't need to win it. He doesn't have that hunger and desire and desperation to win. I think the steals stats are actually alarming lack of managing instances. The way Alex Cora absolutely eats them alive. The Yankees went a single month last year or 2 years ago where they didn't steal a base over 30 days. That's bad managing. And I think that they have shown bad base running and bad fielding, and a couple of those stats, those bullet points I sent, are indicative of it. But overall, I could see why people are upset Boone is getting extended. I would not extend him, but I would have given him this year for sure.
See, if they are a bad base running team this year, and they're a bad defensive team this year with the improvements on paper that they have made, then maybe we could go to the coaching. Then maybe we could go to the managing and the coaching staff and say, okay, what the hell is going on? Is there a problem within the organization? Is it Aaron Boone? Is it the guys he brings in? But I would expect that you are a little bit more athletic. You're probably going to run the bases a little bit better. You better run the bases. That better be a thing. And defensively, I mean, they should be a better defensive team.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're going to throw guys out. I mean, I don't know how Wells is. I know Wells is getting eaten alive too with Trevino last season a little bit. So
yeah,
I don't know if that's gonna change, but it's also a lot on the pitchers. We noticed this last season with the Mets early on. Alvarez couldn't throw anybody out, and then they brought in Luis Torrens, and that's all he did was throw people out. But the pitchers did a better job of holding the guys on. It's a lot on the pitchers as well, as much as almost it is on the catcher.
And Wells, the last 8 weeks of the season, was good, not great at throwing guys out, which I'll take. Just be good.
It wasn't a conversation. We weren't having the conversation. Like, I remember after that Red Sox game, what we were talking about.
Yeah, the conversation. And Cora, that's where Boone actually looks concerning, is when they do play the Red Sox, because Cora outmanages him in a way that's so... It's tough in baseball sometimes to really decide when a manager is better than another guy, unless they are dynasty kind of managers where they've won. You know that Bruce Bochy is better than a lot of almost anyone in the league. You know that. But with Aaron Boone, with Dave Roberts, sometimes the disparity in roster and budget is so different from the Yankees manager and Dodgers manager to the Pirates and the A's. So you don't know who's actually really good and who's not. But when Cora and Boone go against each other, you could tell that one guy's better than the other.
But the thing that I think we're being a little bit unfair about is that when we watch a lot of teams against I think Alex Cora is one of the three, if not the best manager in baseball.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, he makes a difference. Like, he's one of those guys that makes a difference, not only in the clubhouse, but on the field. So, like, Boone's probably he's a top 10 guy. He might be a bottom of the top 10 guy, but he's a top 10 guy, I think, if we were going to choose managers. Like Cora makes a difference. AJ Hinch makes a difference. Those guys are at the top of the list. Boone, I don't know if he's making a difference, but it's certainly, and I don't want to sound like Hal Steinbrenner or be complacent, but it works. It's fine. I mean, he does have, I think, does he not have one of the highest winning percentages in the history of the game as a manager? I mean, he's up there. I mean, all the guy has done is won. I know he had the bad year, but it's not his fault. Aaron Judge ran into a freaking wall, and broke his toe.
And then you also can't, because I have friends who will complain to me about the roster and then tell me Boone sucks. I mean, you can't complain to me that Gleyber Torres is lazy and Gary Sanchez is lazy and they don't have a third baseman and they don't have a left fielder and their bullpen stinks, and then tell me, oh yeah, and by the way, Boone sucks too because they have all those problems. That's also a little unfair to him. But I agreed with what Cashman said the other day when he was discussing why he'd extend him. And he basically just said, if I let Aaron Boone go today, there would be 10 teams lined up to hire him. And I totally agree with that. So I'm fine with it. The reason I would not have extended him before the season, and it's two-parted, because simply I think I can get him after next year anyways. I don't think Boone wants to be anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I wanted him to have the pressure of having to win this year, having to go out and elevate his team this season. I would have liked to see him manage with that pressure. And I also think, every once in a while a manager gets fired and, externally, like someone like Tito becomes available. I would have snagged him before the Reds did, but the Yankees were still playing, or Buck a few years ago, not now. But, sometimes a guy becomes available and you just want the flexibility to be able to do it. But whatever. Boone coming back, whatever. All they've really done is win with him. You're right.
They just win. And I think the only year they didn't win, Judge runs into a wall and he was having an MVP season and he would have won it again if he didn't get hurt. It's, what especially talking to a guy that hopefully has, his team has his manager for talking the third person here for the next 10, 15 years. The run through managers, it's not fun. And the Yankees have had they've been blessed to have very good all-time great managers. And now another guy in Boone that he's not an all-time great, but who the hell knows?
Yeah, I think that a lot of fan bases, the Yankees are one, Steelers fans are one. There's so many fan bases that could have it so much worse.
Yeah.
But just because they're not the Dodgers or the Chiefs right now doesn't mean you should fire your coach.
If Terry Francona becomes available and you can go get him, go get him. If Bruce Bochy becomes available and you want to run him in here for 3 years, do that. Like you mentioned, if these great guys are becoming available, then go get them. But if they're not, I don't love to play this game, but what the hell are you going to do? What are you going to do if you let go of them? And I think that's what Cashman says, and he's 110% right. I think some teams would fire their managers just to hire Aaron Boone.
And Boone's brother had a great quote that I think I brought up on here once. Then I want to move to the Mets, but he said it's tough being a manager because and he sees what his brother does, and obviously he's not going to say Aaron Boone does a bad job, but Brett Boone was basically just saying, I see how good he is with the guys. I see the relationship he has. I see how much he cares. I know he's doing a good job, but players get the credit for winning and managers get the credit for losing in baseball. And that's so true because we see how many managers get fired on small market teams that have no marketable players at all. And last year, the Tigers go on this run, and everyone seemed to be trying to figure out how is this team successful besides Skubal? How, he's the only guy here that's really great. How are they going on this magic run? And it's because of AJ Hinch. But very few people decide to actually bring that up because nobody looks to the manager. They always look to the players during winning, and managers make a huge difference. The good ones make a huge difference, and the bad ones make just as much of a difference. And I don't think Boone's a bad one. I don't think he's a great one. I think we're both in the same region with that.
And you talk about the guys in the clubhouse. We heard the stories now about Gleyber Torres and what he said to Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman when they traded for Jazz Chisholm. And that could have blew up in their face. And Aaron Boone kept that quiet, and good on Jazz for saying, you know what, I'll go play third. I'll go do that because they wanted to keep Jazz at second and move Gleyber to third. And Gleyber told them, no, I'm not doing that. And Aaron Boone, and we did not know until the offseason, Aaron Boone did a great job of that, handling that situation that could have been terrible and blew up in their face. And it did not. And we know where they ended up in the World Series. And Jazz did a decent job.
Absolutely right. Jazz did a decent job. It didn't really hurt their team in the big picture. Torres at second hurt them more than Jazz at third. But so I'm glad he's gone. But let's talk Mets here. You mentioned Mendoza. This is probably in your lifetime, in our lifetime, the most, forget even Soto, but the most exciting preseason spring training that Mets fans have ever gone through in our age range, because there's, once again, forget Soto, there's a model of sustained winning in place right now that hasn't been there ever, really, in Mets history. Like this is not something that comes around very often, if at all, for Mets fans. And now you have an owner that's considered the best in baseball. You have a team president, general manager that's considered one of the 5 best in baseball. A manager who was so awesome last year, had his ups and downs throughout the season, but was awesome as a guy, as a leader last season. You got to the NLCS when no one expected you to. They have this massive offseason. It's not just Soto. They had a great offseason. And you have the core as well of real Mets to go along with those guys. It just feels different, Mike. It feels like they are the team to watch for this season based on just their energy, what they'll do. They're the team to watch to see how they meet their expectations.
Yeah, it's easily the most excited I've ever been for any of my teams heading into a season. It's funny. Last night I was doing some things, in my room on the computer, whatever. I just wanted to put something on TV, and as we know, there was nothing on except for that godforsaken. I didn't even put it on. Don't know what happened in the NBA All-Star game. So I went on YouTube and I watched Game 3 of the wild card round yesterday. It was just on in the background, okay? And watching, and the Mets got dominated. I mean, Lindor had their only 2 hits in 8 innings of play. So I'm watching though, and like going through the lineup, and I'm like, this lineup was good last year. I mean, it was Lindor, Vientos, Nimmo, Alonso, like that was good. And that got to the NLCS. And now you're adding Soto to that. And I'm sitting there like, holy crap. Like this is gonna be unbelievable. And you have an even more motivated Alonso to go along with Soto, to go along with hopefully a mature, more mature. I'm not saying he was immature, but another year of experience, Mark Vientos. I mean, Kevin, I've never been more excited. Offensively, this team is going to be one of the 3 to 5 best teams in baseball.
Absolutely, barring health, of course, they will be. And what I think the Yankees will miss most with Soto and the Mets will gain the most is something that, of course, we've mentioned, so many people have mentioned, but it's the protection aspect of Soto and what he does for the guys around him. You get his stats, of course, you're going to get his 90 to 110 RBIs, his 400 on base, his 280 to 310 average, whatever you end up getting, 30 home runs, you're going to get those numbers from Soto. But it's almost impossible to not see at least a repeat season from Lindor, where he's the best shortstop in the league, and Alonso drastically improve, and Mark Vientos at least continue on the trajectory we saw if he doesn't drastically improve. And that's all you need from your top 4. I don't think the Mets' bottom of the order is great, but I think it's good enough to pick up what I expect from this top 5.
I mean, you compare it to the rest of the league and what the rest of the league's bottom of the order looks like, it's certainly up there. I mean, and again, you have younger players that I think are going to get opportunities here as well, and they're going to have to mix some of those guys in because they just have too many of these prospects coming up. They're going to have to trade some of these guys at some point for whatever the need is at the deadline. But you're going to see Acuna get a chance at second base. McNeil had a big second half last season before he got injured. Alvarez obviously is going to be the starting catcher. Does he take those next steps? So I think that you got a really good chance here to be one of the better lineups in baseball, one of the better offenses in baseball. And it's exciting, man. Winker's here for a full year and playing him in certain spots, in good spots, in platoons. I think he's going to succeed once again.
And I like Siri also. I know that the Mets have gotten a little hate, I think, for Siri. You see him in that order. He's not a good hitter.
No.
We know that. But I like him as a Bader replacement, what they tried to do with Bader last year, what they tried to do with Taylor last year. And I think Siri could just be a good everyday guy to hold that down. He's only going to hit 210, maybe 220 for you, and he's not going to produce anything. But he's going to give you a really good glove in the outfield when he's next to guys that you share in the outfield with guys that aren't exceptional defensively. Yeah. That's actually a big concern I have with the Mets that I want to get to in a second. But the bottom of the order, what they have that most other teams don't have, I'll say after the top 6 guys, which would be in no specific order: Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, Vientos, Winker, because I do like Winker. So after those 6, Alvarez, McNeil, Siri, what they don't have in that, what they have in that most other teams don't have, is the potential of Alvarez. Yeah. We have been big critics of Alvarez. We've been harsh on Alvarez. He is the X factor for this team this year, because I know Lindor is giving me a good season. I know Soto's giving me a great season. I know Alonso is going to be good, and I know Vientos is going to be good. I expect Nimmo and Winker to play their role that they always play as well. Francisco Alvarez is the guy that could make this whole thing turn. You just made a video on it 2 days ago, but he's the guy that can make this whole entire thing just explode, whether good or bad for the Mets. They absolutely need him to be the number 1 prospect, the next great catcher that he was supposed to be. And even if he's not, hitting 275 with 35 homers, he's got to be good. He cannot be a guy in the lineup that you look at and say, all right, we got Alvarez here. We're going to go right at him. We're going to get through him, and we're going to move to the next guy. He's got to be good.
I mean, he's 23, so much hype. We know the bat can play. We know he's got power. It's about putting it together and being consistent for him. He's so young. I think a lot of people have said he's really changed the swing up a little bit. I think the experience, the exposure to a guy like JD Martinez last season helps. I think a guy like Juan Soto coming over and just whatever he could give him, any advice he could give him, the exposure to Soto could be great as well for him. So listen, my expectations for him aren't as high as I think a lot of others have for him. I think a lot of people believe this is going to be his breakout season. I don't think he's going to be a bad player. I think he's going to be a productive guy for where he's going to hit 6th, 7th in this lineup. And you hope that he's able to take not all of the next steps, but a couple of steps forward to being a very productive major league player.
Yeah, and I look at the lineup right now in that outfield. I want to talk about it. The trio of Soto, Nimmo, Siri. Do you get concerned at all about the defense that this outfield will bring? Because 2/3 scare me.
Yeah, I think the only way I would be concerned is if Nimmo is really still battling the plantar fasciitis. I know that really doesn't go away, but if Nimmo is a liability out there, then I would have a problem. He wasn't a liability out there most of the season in 24. He was pretty good in left field. He wasn't great, but he wasn't bad. So if Nimmo's as healthy as possible coming into the season, then I'm not too concerned. Again, Siri and Taylor is a really nice platoon, and they're both really good defensively out there. So I don't have an issue. I also think they're going to get a couple of DH days in here for Nimmo and Soto. So you're going to see Taylor, I think, out there, Marte out there a little bit, which Marte scares the hell out of me. Marte can't play the field anymore. But it doesn't concern me. I don't love it. I don't love it. But they weren't good defensively out there last season.
No, they weren't.
They really weren't.
I worry about Soto in right field. I think it's overblown, though, because I don't think he was good with the Yankees last year in right field. Yeah. And I know that he says he wants to work on his defense, and winning a Gold Glove is something that means something to him. I just don't know if naturally he has the ability to win a Gold Glove. Like, I just don't think he's good enough. Naturally,
he doesn't need
to. That's my exact point. Is it's a little overblown because the Yankees got to a World Series largely because of Juan Soto last year.
Yeah,
and he was not a good defender. He was average at best defender.
Can you be close to league average in right field? I don't give a rat's ass how the rest of it goes.
I think he cost them 1 run in the postseason defensively, and it was in Game 1 of the World Series.
Yes, he did. That was bad. That was really bad, though. That was really bad. Yes.
That was terrible. But that is the play you're going to get from him every once in a while. But he costs you a run in the field. He usually gives you 2 or 3 a night at the plate. So you'll take the bad with the great with Juan Soto. But yeah, defensively, I think the Mets have a pretty good squad here. Overall.
Let me ask you this question. I heard this driving home before. Do the Mets this season, like projected lineup this season with Soto, is it better? And I'm genuinely asking this, and you probably might have to go just run through a quick lineup for me. Is it better than the best lineup last season with the Yankees?
Well, I think the best lineup last season with the Yankees would have probably been their playoff lineups.
So Glaber, Soto,
Judge, Stanton, Wells, Chisholm, Volpe, Rizzo, and Verdugo. I think that Yankees lineup might be...
It's close.
Well, so let's go spot by spot.
Okay.
But don't make Lindor the leadoff because you would have to compare Lindor with Judge in this scenario, I guess, right? Because you can't compare Lindor. But you can't, how meaningless is it to compare Lindor to Torres and Judge to Vientos? Or do you want... No, all right, so we'll just go spot for spot. Lindor, better leadoff hitter.
Yeah.
By Soto is a wash as a second hitter.
Okay.
And then is the gap between Judge and Vientos as large or bigger than the gap between Judge and than the gap between Lindor and Torres?
It's probably similar. It's probably very similar.
Probably similar. So top 3, let's call top 3 equal.
Okay.
And it's also fair to say, I know we're going off Yankees' best lineup, but The Yankees did not have Torres in the leadoff spot, and they had a complete hole in front of Soto almost the entire season.
Yeah, but I want the best, dude. I'm giving you the best of what the Mets looks like.
Yeah, because of course we'll look back here in September, late September, and the Mets will not have had their best lineup for 162 games.
Right.
That's how baseball goes. But top three, we'll say, is a wash. And the 4, 5, 6 for the Yankees last year would be Stanton, Wells, and Chisholm.
And the Mets would be Nimmo, Alonso, Nimmo, probably Winker.
I think the Yankees are better at every spot.
I wouldn't say every spot. I think whatever spot Alonso's in, I think he's better.
I don't. I struggle to put him over Stanton last season hitting. I need to see Alonso. All right, I'd rather have Alonso than Stanton, so I'll give it to him. But I think last year Stanton was a better hitter than Alonso, all things considered. Because even his regular
season too?
His regular season, I'm going to pull both up, but if I remember correctly, his regular season was as productive as Alonso in a significantly less amount of games played.
All right, pull it up.
Yeah.
My computer is just so slow right now, I can't even go off of the StreamYard.
It's all right. Stanton last year, 114 games played.
Mm-hmm.
OPS was 871. He slugged 525, on base 345. He had 27 home runs and 72 RBIs.
Wow, that was his season last year?
He had a really good year last year when he played. He just missed 58 games.
All right, yeah, it has to be. All right, you have to go Stanton.
So the Yankees middle of the order, I'd give him every spot. And then the bottom three, I might give the Mets every spot because Rizzo was awful. Volpe was not good for most of the year. Yeah. So you're going with Rizzo versus who? McNeil or Alvarez? Either way, I'm giving it to the Mets. Rizzo was one of the worst players in the league last year. And then Volpe versus McNeil or Alvarez, I'm going to give it to the Mets again. And then the 9-hitter was Siri versus Verdugo. Is that not the worst wash of all time offensively?
That's pretty bad.
That's a pretty bad wash offensively, the two. But that, once again, you go through it, that's probably maybe the Yankees get the slightest edge because they were better in the top 6.
Right. And you have Judge, and he's the best player.
But if
it's very close.
If you wanted to argue with me that the Mets lineup is better this year because they might be a little more athletic, that's fine. But I think I would take the Yankees. And you know what? You just kind of said it. Sorry to cut you off there, but you just kind of said it. The Yankees had the one player on either team that's better than Soto.
Yeah. It's just I heard it and I heard it on the radio, and you know who it's from. Which it pissed me off. And I was like, because he made the comment well, Soto has to get there and go carry the team. He's on a significantly lesser lineup. And I was like, I don't know about that. I think it's pretty close. If we put it on paper right now, I think it's close. And while I was thinking about it, I was leaning Yankees because, again, you have Judge. But I think it's very close. I think the lineups are very comparable.
And I think you just
ultra talented.
break it down that way. And if the deciding factor there really becomes Stanton versus Alonso, that's a really close two lineups.
Yeah, and because this season that's gonna flip. Obviously, I think
you'd expect it to.
Alonso's gonna have
had another dud of a year. If he repeated what he did last year, that is wildly disappointing for the Mets.
Well, considering the lineup he's hitting in, yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Adding Soto, would you hit Alonso behind him or behind Vientos?
I actually think I saw this stat the other day that says the 3-hitter hits with I don't know if I sent it to you or not.
You didn't send it to me, but I saw it.
The 3-hitter hits with he has the most at bats with 2 outs and nobody on. So it's you're who do you choose to put potentially in that situation? It's more times with nobody on and 2 outs. Would I hit Vientos in that situation, or would I hit Alonso in that situation? And I think I'd lean Alonso there just because of the experience and he's older and this and that. I think I probably hit Alonso there.
But I wonder what that number of 2 outs, nobody on becomes when Lindor and Soto hit in front of you.
Yeah.
Because I think last year with Torres, we saw it in the playoffs last year with the Yankees, and unfortunately Judge was terrible in the playoffs. Torres and Soto, it felt like the Yankees had either no one on, 2 men on, no one out, or at least one on, one out.
Yeah, no, they were great.
And Lindor's obviously better than Torres. Because Soto doesn't hit into double plays either.
So you would hit Vientos. Like, I go back and forth. Like, originally I was, Vientos is hitting third and Alonso's hitting fourth.
Yeah, I would actually, this might be a crazy one, but I don't know if it's crazy. I would probably go Lindor, Soto, Vientos, Nimmo, Alonso.
Really?
Yeah, I would just
break up the lefty-righty?
Break it up a little bit, and I think Nimmo has a better chance with 2 outs to put the ball in play than Alonso.
And get on base. Yeah.
But Alonso does have the 3-run home run ability with 2 out or with an out in the cleanup spot. So I like Alonso in the 5. No knock on Alonso. I'm not saying Nimmo's a better player, but I just like Nimmo there. And Nimmo's if Alonso's good, think about how protected Nimmo is now and how many good pitches he's going to see that can elevate his game.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. I'm just trying to, you bring Alonso back, right? Is it an ego thing? Do you think that becomes an issue? Like, you bring Alonso back the way you brought him back, which, by the way, no press conference is absolutely crazy. But we can talk about that. I can't believe there has not been a press conference.
I know.
Whatever.
Even a Zoom. You couldn't give him a Zoom press conference?
Everybody's at Port St. Lucie. Everybody's there.
Yeah, every reporter's there. Just sit him down. It doesn't have to be. Cohen doesn't have to be there. Stearns doesn't have to be there.
Exactly. You know what? He's probably going to do that today. He's probably, because Soto did it yesterday. I know Lindor did it over the weekend as well. He's probably going to sit down today and do a one-on-one with the media. But it's crazy that they didn't do it like a reintroductory press conference. I mean, I remember thinking when they signed him, like, this is going to be awkward. This press conference might be a little awkward. And they're probably going to do it in Port St. Lucie. But there was nothing. Nothing.
Some stat here from Brendan.
His career 1 OPS. Yeah, Brendan and his Jalen Hurts Super Bowl crew neck yesterday.
God, and the Giants. We gotta change the Giants.
I know, it's so bad. It's so bad. He also made a really bad comment about Eli the other day, which really pissed me off. Like,
what do you say?
Guy rooted for Eli his whole life. No, in our group chat, he emphasized a message making fun of Eli Manning, and it really put me over the edge. I gotta say, out of everything he said about the Eagles, that one put me over the edge.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bad.
Grew up a Giants fan with Eli.
And then made fun of Eli the week after the Eagles win the Super Bowl, and he's on a parade float in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, not good.
Tough, but this is not the Sunday recap, so we'll move back.
It's not.
Mets and Yankees lineups both are going to be fascinating. You didn't give me your Yankees mock lineup before.
Let me give you the Yankee mock lineup.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to say this, Kevin. I think if everybody's healthy, this should be the lineup.
Okay.
I'm very confident in that. All right, where is it? All right, ready?
Yep, ready.
Leading off, Cody Bellinger. Batting second, Aaron Judge. Batting third, Austin Wells. Batting fourth, Stanton if he's healthy. Fifth, Jazz. Sixth, Goldie. Seventh, Dominguez. This one I could go either way, either Volpe 8 or I like the double lead off, possibly a Volpe 9. I don't know which way you'd want to go, but Volpe or the third baseman 8-9.
All right. I like that. I like Bellinger in the leadoff the most.
I think he has to hit leadoff.
I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think he should be. And you had Wells hitting 3. I can get behind that. I like that line.
If Bellinger is not hitting third, then who's going to hit third?
I think Goldschmidt's going to hit third.
That's a problem. That's a massive
Bellinger
problem.
hits leadoff. I think because the Yankees have shown me over the years, last year being an exception because they actually added a hitter in Soto that's that forces you to put him in your top three. You know, they don't usually have that hitter. I think they have shown me that they are okay with wasting the 3 spot, as that stat that we mentioned before suggests you should do, because I watched Aaron Hicks hitting the 3 spot for a full season. I watched Josh Donaldson get some run there. I watched Anthony Rizzo get some run there. So I do think the Yankees are okay with wasting the 3 spot with someone who just gives you quality at bats.
Not even Jazz there?
No, I think Jazz, if he's not hitting leadoff, which he shouldn't, doesn't get on base enough. The benefit to Jazz hitting leadoff, obviously, is that if he does get on, he's probably going to get the second.
Right.
But I think he's going to have to hit down in the middle of the order, late middle, like 6, 7, 5, 6.
I'm
7.
thinking my thought process with Bellinger in that leadoff spot is I'm getting a more athletic Kyle Schwarber kind of leadoff batter. That's my thought process there, and that's why I don't think it's even a discussion.
And I want Bellinger and Judge getting the most at bats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
those are the two guys. Bellinger, you got to break him in. He's got to have a big year this year at Yankee Stadium. So give him the most at bats. Put him right in front of Judge. You put him behind Judge, it's kind of ineffective, because if Stanton's hurt, that even if Stanton's healthy, regular season Stanton doesn't garner the fear of pitchers to pitch around or give good pitches to the guy in front of him. If Bellinger's hitting in front of Stanton in a big spot and you can walk Bellinger, you're not going to just feed him strikes. You're going to pitch around Bellinger a little bit.
Problem with Bellinger is he's been inconsistent. I mean, he had the terrible year in his walk year, goes to Chicago, has a really great year. He's back with Chicago, and he was good, but it was a down season based off of what he did the season prior. Now he's another year older. Again, I like the spot. I like the situation. I've wanted the Yankees to get him for a couple of seasons now, and I think he's going to have a good year. But to say it's not a risk, to say that he's going to, be just a very productive player for the Yankees, I mean, it's not a sure thing.
No, I agree with that. I think that,
but I like him, and I think he's going to be productive.
He should have a little bit of a better season than he did last year, at the least.
And that works.
Judge, because he doesn't have much protection over in the Cubs lineup.
No.
And I'm trying to look up his last season and see. You just like to see a higher on base for him to
hit leadoff.
Man, he was awful in his walk here with LA.
So bad. But then he had a good postseason.
He had a 65 OPS.
Yeah, but that postseason was good.
Yeah. That's the only reason Chicago paid him.
Yeah.
But then he had the great first year with Chicago.
Great.
307 with an 880 OPS, 97 RBIs.
And then that got him the 3-year deal.
That's what you're looking for him to do with the Yankees this year.
If you could get that.
If you get that, you're probably the best team in the American League. If you get 2023 Cody Bellinger, which is only a year ago, it's not that far removed. But, I mean, this guy was so good in 2019 and 2018. Where did that player go?
I don't know. I really don't know.
We talked about it with Chris Bryant last year, but this was another one of those guys that was just the young, because Judge had 2017 at 25, 26 years old. Bellinger had his MVP season at 23. That was his third year in the league after 2 very good seasons to start off his career.
It's the same conversation. Like, this is going to be one of the best players in the game, a guy that's going to win a couple of more MVPs in the National League, and now we're talking about him bouncing around teams, not having, not getting that big contract a lot of people thought he would get. Now, listen, he's still a productive player. He's not what Chris Bryant has become, but it's nothing close to what we thought we were going to get.
It's his third team before he turns 29. I mean, who would have ever thought that to be the case with Bellinger when he was 23 years old winning the MVP? And the Dodgers have won 2 World Series since he won MVP, and he hasn't been the best or a top 3 player on either of them. He wasn't even on the team this past year, obviously. Just a crazy, crazy turn of events in the career of Bellinger.
I remember the conversations, who's better, Judge or Bellinger.
Yep.
I remember those conversations.
It was legit, too. It was not this fluff National League fan or Dodger fan argument. It was legit.
Yeah. No,
and now they're hitting next to each other.
Yeah, there we go.
Beautiful.
Maybe you get 2019 Cody Bellinger.
Maybe we do. Maybe we do. Time will tell. Anything else today, Mike?
No, nothing else. Just
all right.
Really, really excited. How about that?
Yeah, I'm pumped. Well, we'll be back next week, and I think we'll start to move into, I don't know if it'll be next week's episode, but we'll talk about it over the next couple days. And maybe we have our predictions episode, which of course we do. Everybody does, and we will be no exception, where we talk about standings and where we think the teams are going to finish, MVPs. Maybe I go Pete Alonso again this year for
wow.
But we will.
I'll go Soto.
We will. Of course you will. We will be discussing everything, and we'll be getting to at least one, maybe hopefully 2 episodes a week moving forward. So make sure to follow the Burrows BTO on X. That is our Twitter account. If you're already following BTO Media, it's the same account. We just changed the branding. And BTO Media on Instagram, TikTok. That's where you'll find our videos. Also, of course, on YouTube. If you're not watching YouTube, you can also find the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify after all of our episodes. So we will see you in the next one. Make sure to stay tuned for some short content over the next week. Next week, we return as spring training and games ramp up and baseball really gets started.